Order. The first item on the order paper is questions addressed to the Deputy President. Members may press the talk button on their desks if they wish to ask a supplementary question. The first question has been asked by the Honorable B.A. Khadebe. And before I call upon the Deputy President, I'd like to explain to the House that I got a letter from the economic freedom fighters who informed me that they will not be in the House today because they would be in another activity. Secondly, they pointed out that they do have a question on the question paper, and in fact, we will entertain the question because it is scheduled on the question paper. We will answer the question and take supplementary questions. I now call upon the Deputy President to respond to the question raised by the Honorable Khadebe.
Thank you. Honorable Speaker, thank you. On the 13th of September 2016, I had the privilege of receiving and meeting the first Vice President of the Republic of South Sudan, Mr. Thabang Deng Gai, who at the meeting briefed me on recent developments in the country, including the fighting that has taken place over a number of days, but more specifically in July 2016. This fighting resulted in the death of many soldiers and also resulted in the subsequent flight of the then First Vice President, Dr. Riek Machar. Vice President Deng Gai briefed me on the process that led to his appointment as the first Vice President, a position he holds pending the return of Dr. Riek Machar to the country. It was instructive to learn that the transitional government of South Sudan that was put together following the peace agreement is proceeding, and it's implementing the peace agreement as well as a number of other government programs. So the security sector reform as well as economic reform are key challenges that face that country. Vice President Thabang Deng furthermore conveyed the continued commitment of the government of South Sudan to supporting the joint monitoring process that is chaired by former President of Botswana, Festus Mogae. In spite of the recent challenges that they face, such as the clashes that took place on the 8th of July and the subsequent split in the SPLM in opposition, all factions of the SPLM still believe that the Arusha agreement that was struck the previous year remains an important tool in the resolution of the conflict in South Sudan. The members that were expelled from the SPLM, which led to the outbreak of the war, have also returned back to South Sudan, and they've been reinstated to their previous positions. And on the 7th of January 2016, the first extraordinary meeting of the National Convention was held, in which all three SPLM factions participated. So at a party level, they are trying to find one another. South Africa, working together with Tanzania, will continue to assist the peace process in South Sudan. And for myself, acting as President Zuma's envoy, will also be assisting and participating in all this. And we hope that in the end, the people of South Sudan will find the peace that they are bound to find, as all the countries in the region, particularly the IGAD countries, are able to assist them as much as they possibly can. Thank you.
The Honorable Hadebe.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Deputy President, the African Union has made two clarion calls on peace. First is that the guns must be silenced in Africa by 2020. Number two, that there can be no peace without development, and there can be no development without peace. So since the SPLM factions have agreed to work together, are the donor countries taken on board on this process since they have suspended their official development assistance? And what developmental programs are planned for the displaced people who are in the refugee camps around Juba? And number two, what measures are put in place to have a single army? Since even here in South Africa, during our transitional phase, all the armies were put together into a single army under the Transitional Executive Council. Is there such a plan for the Sudanese Liberation Army factions? Thank you.
The Honorable, the Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Yes, it is important that peace process should go hand in hand with economic development, and this is even more true for a country like South Sudan. The African Union has taken a number of very progressive decisions in this regard and has placed economic development as a priority area that needs to be attended to. In South Sudan, and particularly in my discussions with Vice President Deng, the key issue that they are now focusing on is economic development, but more importantly, infrastructure development throughout the country. And Vice President Deng has been traveling around the world, meeting with various development donor countries, trying to convince them that they should continue funding South Sudan and they should not give up on assisting South Sudan. And indeed, South Sudan does need to be assisted as much as possible, because with the oil price having declined as much as it has had an impact, a very negative impact on their economy. And so they need all the assistance that countries around the world can give them. When it comes to consolidating their armies into one single army, that is a work in progress. With the outbreak of hostilities recently, it became a little bit more difficult, but we are convinced that when they do find peace once again, they will be able to implement the peace agreements that were signed, because those peace agreements do talk to this issue on how South Sudan's various armies can be put together into one army so that South Sudan can move forward towards peace. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The Honorable Dudley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will South Africa continue with post-conflict reconstruction and development projects, and how does South Africa assist with South Sudan's need for skilled civil servants to provide basic services to the people of the emerging state? And is this placing any strain on South African budgets and capacity? And has South Africa been pursuing economic and investment opportunities in the new Republic of South Sudan? If so, what are the relevant details? Thank you.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Yes, South Africa has committed to assist South Sudan in all ways that are possible and affordable. When it comes to skills development, we have in the past assisted quite a number of South Sudanese government officials who have either come here for training or have been assisted with training by some of our people who've been to South Sudan. Now, South Sudan has valued this a great deal and has been greatly thankful. Has this had an adverse effect on our own resources? I would like to think not, because we have not been committing hundreds and hundreds of millions of rands. We've been doing it within the budget of our international relations department or ministry. So it's been meaningful assistance at an affordable pace and level, and we think that we should continue doing so. A number of South African companies continue to travel to South Sudan to look out for opportunities, and our embassy there continuously assists South African companies and open doors for them wherever it is possible. So we now have a number of companies from South Africa almost permanently based there, doing business or trying to do business. South Sudan is an open frontier for South African companies, and we believe that they should take up those opportunities because they are plentiful, and South Sudan has a very, very warm and friendly disposition towards South Africa. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Msimbi.
Honourable Speaker, I'm sorry, it's me. I've got a follow-up question. Honourable Deputy President, last week we saw some soldiers who have been in the trenches for quite a long time being paraded by the UN envoy. And it was indicated that these will have to be integrated back to their country, and they will be given some psychological or psychiatric care so that they could be in a position to live within the country because they've been in a war for a long time. Then I would like to know, Honorable Deputy President, as to how many other countries have come forward with specific programs to assist them, to help them get integrated within Sudan, within their country, if there are any.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Madam Speaker, there are quite a number of countries that are assisting South Sudan, and they come from the various continents of the world. I know for sure that from East Asia, there are quite a number of countries. China is one of those. And from Europe, Northern Europe, particularly the Nordic countries, are giving quite a great deal of assistance. And of course, a number of African countries themselves are involved in assisting South Sudan. So South Sudan has accumulated a number of good friends that are willing to assist it to rebuild its country from the ravages of war and also to rebuild their economy. So assistance is plentiful, also at the military level. The issue that you are talking about, we have found that quite a number of countries are willing to give military assistance and also the reintegration of soldiers who may well have been displaced by war.
The Honorable Mukhalapa.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Deputy President, in light of the reported gross human rights violations, displacement, torture and persecution of opposition parties by the government of South Sudan, aiming purely at creating a one-party state by suppressing multi-party democracy, would you just agree with me, yes or no, sir? Would you then agree that South Africa's withdrawal from the International Criminal Court is an indication that your government has turned its back on human rights-based foreign policy and has lost all credibility?
The Honorable Deputy President.
No, South Africa has not turned its back on human rights at all. In fact, we were recently regarded as the 4th country in the world that upholds human rights. Now, that flies in the face of what you are saying, because when world bodies look at South Africa in terms of adherence to human rights and say that we are 4th, being 4th in class does not mean that you have failed. It means that there is something good that you are doing. The issue of withdrawal from the ICC will be properly discussed by this Parliament, and the government has taken this decision, and of course Parliament is going to have a great opportunity to discuss this matter and to discuss all the aspects and the parameters of this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy President. We now come to question number 16, asked by the Honorable Ngobo, the Honorable Deputy President.
Madam Speaker, the issue that we've been dealing with social partners in NEDLAC that deals with labor stability and how we can bring an end to the violent nature and duration of strikes has been going on for quite a while, and I'm happy to report that quite a lot of progress has been made. This work has been undertaken by NEDLAC, as I said, but through a technical task team that reports to a committee of principals, a committee that is made up of the top leaders of the various components of the various social partners that make up NEDLAC. A separate task team has been discussing the issue of wage inequality that was raised here in this parliament during the State of the Nation address by the President, and also to introduce a national minimum wage. The deliberations on labor stability are nearing completion. A meeting of the Committee of Principals on the 22nd of October found common ground on most of the areas that are being negotiated. In fact, I can report that 95% of the issues that have been discussed have been agreed. Only a few of those issues that amount to about 5% or less still need to be finalized. And the issues that have been under discussion include the Code of Good Practice on collective bargaining, industrial action, and picketing. The code aims to strengthen as well as to promote orderly collective bargaining and provide clear guidelines to both employees and employers, employees obviously being guided and led by their trade unions. It includes a code on picketing, which among other things provides generic rules for picketing. The social partners are also close to finalizing an accord in which all parties represented in NEDLAC will be able to commit themselves to promote the constitutional rights of all, collective bargaining, and peaceful industrial action. The draft accord also contains a declaration that violence, intimidation, and damage to property is unacceptable during industrial action. It also deals with issues such as the conduct of the police and private security during industrial action. It also involves the role of the CCMA in facilitating and mediating strike action, and it also has to do with the labor relations amendment that are envisaged. All these aim to strengthen the dispute resolution process and to give effect to the measures contained in the Code of Good Practice. The work that is being done by the technical team is actually quite promising, and we hope that when it finally agrees, it will come up with a new labor relations dispensation in our country. It has also tackled some of the most challenging and contentious issues in our labor market environment and developed sustainable solutions that have the support of all social partners. And I'd like to thank all those who are involved in the NEDLAC process for the very positive approach that they have all had, both business, labor, government, and communities, in trying to reach agreement on all this. They've been doing so from a solution-oriented process, hoping that they will be able to reach agreement, and I'm hoping that agreement will be reached soon, even in fact before the end of the year. The same applies to the national minimum wage discussions. Those have been proceeding well. We're waiting for a report from the panel of advisors that we appointed. That panel should be giving us their report before the end of November, whereafter the Committee of Principals will be able to get together to discuss the report that comes from the advisory panel and finally agree on a national minimum wage, which we will be able to implement as time goes on. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Ngobo.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Deputy President, thank you. What measures will be implemented by social partners to ensure adherence to the guidelines they have set for themselves for the purpose of maintaining labor stability? And what measures and strategies will be employed to counter job losses and promote job creation, including youth employment? Thank you very much.
Honorable Deputy President.
The measures that will be taken by the social partners, Madam Speaker, will no doubt be enshrined in the agreement that will be reached by the social partners. And part of those agreements will finally be turned into legislation. For instance, the various accords that will be struck will lead to amendments to the Labor Relations Act. And once that is done, then that becomes law. And no doubt everyone will be required to abide by the laws of our country. So that in itself is a very, very good starting point to get the people who are themselves the road players in the industrial sector or in the economic sector, who will be playing key roles in everything that they do, to themselves reach agreement, bring it here to Parliament to be discussed and debated by the representatives of our people here, and finally reach agreement and pass the legislation. With regard to job losses, are there any strategies that the social partners have been thinking about? Yes, I'm able to say that as the social partners themselves have been meeting in various forums, including the presidential working group that the president set up with labor and with business, there have been discussions on what we do to stem the job losses that are continuing to hemorrhage our economy. And one of those has been to hold a job summit, and that is a matter that is being discussed and being strategized about, and I'm sure at the right time that too will happen. When it comes to youth employment, proposals have been put forward to various role players in our economy, business, as well as labor, to see how best we can address the issue of youth employment. There is a very exciting proposal right now on the table, which is being discussed, which can lead to the creation of an opportunity for young people to be trained, to be brought into learnerships, internships, and mentorship, and to be trained on the job. And that could affect up to 1 million young people. So once that proposal is finalized, I think it will open great opportunities for young people in our country and prepare them for the world of work, where many of them, having acquired knowledge and skills and capability in all these initiatives that are being mooted, will be able to get jobs and be able to be actively involved in the economy. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Ollis.
Deputy President, Chairperson, we're glad to hear there's some progress on strike violence. But Deputy President, in 1987, you whipped up a crowd of NUM workers with your loudhailer and sent them out on the streets in protest action. 11 people lost their lives in that strike, but you did nothing. In 1987, the railway and harbour strike, the ANC called for mobile units to stop scab labour. 5 people were murdered by necklacing, but you did nothing. In 1989, scab workers were thrown out of moving trains. 30 people died, but you did nothing. In 2006, in the Sitawe strike, 57 people died and you did nothing. In 2012, when the COSATU survey indicated that 50% of workers believed that with no violence, they would not get their pay increase, you did nothing. How can we then conclude that the only reason that you are finally taking some action on strike violence now is in order to become president? You've realized that you've got to get the blood of Marikana off your hands, and you've got to stop a sovereign ratings downgrade by Standard & Poor.
The Honorable, the Deputy President.
Madam Speaker, I fail to find out what the question is. Because quite frankly, I thought that he wanted me to answer a question. And I would ask him some interesting question myself. What did he do when the apartheid regime was slaughtering our people? That is the question I would ask, because as I check, he is white, and being white means that he is one of those who supported the apartheid regime, and he voted.
Point of order.
Unless today he says he's one of those who did not vote for apartheid.
Point of order.
Now, I don't see what the question is.
Order, Honorable Deputy President, there's a point of order. Yes, Honorable Steenhuisen.
Madam
Honorable Ollis, can you please take your seat?
Madam Speaker, there have been several rulings made in this House, including once by you when you were the Deputy Speaker in that chair, about racial stereotyping. To say that all white people supported apartheid is racial
Order,
stereotyping.
honorable members, let's hear the point of order of Honorable Steenhuisen.
To say that all white people supported apartheid is not only untrue, but it is the most disgusting form of racial stereotyping. And I would ask that you rule that that is out of order, and that and you confirm that racial stereotyping has no place in this parliament.
Indeed, Honorable Deputy President, we don't make statements that racially characterize members of the House. Would the DP like to indeed withdraw?
Madam Speaker, I'm quite happy to withdraw and
Thank
would like
you.
to say to Honorable Hollis, I withdraw and I'm sorry to use that reference.
Thank you.
But what I will say, that he was a privileged citizen of this country, that
Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable
Speaker.
DP. Your chance to answer has passed, actually.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Waters.
When
Honorable Ollis, please take your seat.
When one withdraws a comment, one does so unconditionally, not with a proviso. The Deputy President had a proviso and a condition to that.
Honorable Deputy President actually withdrew, and then he went on to make another statement from which I restricted him to continue. And now we
Honorable
come to Honorable...
Honorable Speaker,
yes, Honorable
Speaker.
Khadebe.
before we pass the issue of Honorable Ollis, Honorable Ollis violated rule number 84 and 85, whereby he said the Deputy President has got blood of the people of Marikana in his hands. So he must withdraw that. It has not happened.
Madam Speaker,
Honorable Steenhuisen, please let me address Honorable Ollis. Honorable Ollis, can you please withdraw the words that say the Honorable DP has blood on his hands?
Speaker, I will withdraw those words. May I address you on another matter?
You have withdrawn, okay.
I have withdrawn those words.
Yes.
I've-
Now, I'd like to continue to honor the Honorable Steenhuisen, who was on his feet. Honorable Steenhuisen? Okay, that's fine.
Chairperson, may I just address you on a point of personal explanation, which is a facility.
Honorable Ollis, please,
Speaker.
we are presently busy with the questions
I
to the
understand
Deputy
that.
President.
I understand
So
that,
let's
Speaker.
talk about your personal explanation separately outside of this particular sitting.
Unfortunately, we can't do that, Speaker, because when you've been personally attacked,
No,
you
thank
have
you,
a right
Honorable
to explain.
Ollis, please.
It's in the rules.
Please
Speaker.
take your seat.
It's in the rules. You can't just
Take your
obviate the
seat,
rules.
Honorable Ollis.
What you are doing is breaking the rules
We
of this
would
House.
like to proceed to the supplementary question by the Honorable Mwango.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable Deputy President, South Africa is well known internationally for its labor unrest and violent and unprotected strike actions. It goes without saying that this is a major deterrence to us being able to attract foreign investment and business to the country. My question is, are you in engagement with COSATU specifically as a ruling party tripartite alliance partner as regards steps that are immediately implementable to promote labor stability in South Africa going forward? Kindly advise this House on those deliberations, if any. Thank you.
The Honorable the Deputy President.
Madam Speaker, the discussions that we are having at the NEDLEC level with the social partners involve not only COSATU, but all the federations that represent working people in our country. And those discussions are aimed at entrenching labor stability in our country. And indeed, we should be mindful that we should actually applaud labor for the role that it continues to play, even in these trying economic times, as they have been working together with government, with business, and community organizations to try and find answers, to find solutions to some of the challenges that working people in our country have faced. Solutions on problems that have led them to go on strike from time to time. And in these discussions, we are grappling with very important propositions that will lead to solutions. Now, labor has been playing a very, very positive role, up to and including traveling with delegations from Treasury and business going to various capitals of the world to stress the fact that South Africa is a very good investment destination and that labor stability is something that we have embraced, and that if there are disputes, as they are bound to happen, they will be resolved in terms of agreements, in terms of rules and regulations that we are seeking to arrive at. So there needs to be great applause for the role that labor is playing, because it's playing a very, very positive role indeed. And I'd like everyone in our country to realize that we have a labor movement that is very, very responsible. Labor movement that seeks to assist our economy to grow. They want many more people to be employed, and this fact that we've got a labor movement that has this type of approach and disposition is something that we should see as a great boon as South Africans, as a great pillar of our democracy. So yes, Honorable Member, the labor movement is participating very positively.
The Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Deputy President, I must agree with you that our people today get a lot more value for the work they do than they ever had in the apartheid days. Deputy President, it's a norm in the country that together with strikes, there must be violence, there must be damage to property. In your negotiation, deliberation, have you ever discussed the issue of recovering any costs from these organizations that partake in these strikes? Thank you.
The Honorable the Deputy President.
The issue has not surfaced in the way that you possibly are articulating it. What we're seeking to do is to set up rules that are going to ensure that strikes and any public manifestation that people get involved in is done in an orderly manner, that if there's a picket, it will comply with picket rules, and that if there's a demonstration, it will comply with that, and to get all the attendant partners in all this, be they the police, private security, management, various actors, to comply with the rules and the agreements that we will have struck. So we have not advanced to that level. It is indeed a very important one that if there is to be damage to any property, there needs to be some measure of accountability. And I am sure that we will be moving to address challenges such as those. Thank you very much.
We now move to question number 17 from the Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable, the Deputy President.
In my address at the NEDLEC Annual Summit on the 9th of September, I suggested that all social partners have a responsibility to contribute to a stable economic and social environment. I said that all social partners should be prepared to acknowledge where they may be falling short in meeting and living up to that responsibility. As a representative of government at that summit, I acknowledged and recognized the concerns that were raised by a number of delegates. And the delegates, who are our social partners, had articulated a concern on their part that there appears to be a lack of coherence within government and a perception that different institutions of government were in conflict with each other. While there is a very concerted effort by some in our country to accentuate even the slightest hint of disagreement between state institutions, we must acknowledge that certain events understandably have been giving rise to this concern, a concern that was raised by our social partners as well. We have witnessed public statements on policy that appear to be contradictory, and those are the public statements that have given people concern. We have witnessed in the public arena seemingly heated disagreements between state institutions, including between state-owned entities and government departments. Where they have arisen, steps have been taken to resolve them, and in most cases, they have been resolved. Another matter that has caused concern in many quarters is the investigation of the Minister of Finance, and specifically the manner in which it was conducted. The withdrawal of the charges against Minister Gordon provides us with an opportunity to rebuild the confidence in our economy and in our public institutions. Despite the concern that this matter has understandably caused, government retains its confidence in the country's criminal judicial system and the fair and just judicial processes which have defined our democratic era. The situation requires all of us as South Africans to demonstrate unity in defense of our constitutional values, the integrity of our legal system, and the objective of setting South Africa on a path of sustainable and inclusive economic growth. I am convinced that what may have caused all these issues in the past, we are solving them on an ongoing basis, and we are finding unity of purpose within government. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Steenhuisen will take the follow-up question on behalf of the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Deputy President, I'm sure you'd agree with me that the undermining of Chapter 9 institutions is also leading to this perception of instability. Now, does the Deputy President agree that President Zuma's frivolous and vexatious interdict against the Public Protector state capture report, which he had to embarrassingly withdraw before court today, was nothing but an attempt to undermine this Chapter 9 institution? And do you agree that the President and not the people of South Africa should pick up the bill for this vexatious litigation? Or perhaps you would agree that the South African taxpayer should continue to fund President Zuma's attempts to evade accountability?
The Honorable, the Deputy President.
The issue of our state institutions, particularly Chapter 9 institutions, are regulated by our Constitution. And the various rights that people of South Africa have are also regulated by our Constitution. So individuals, be they officials, politicians, or ordinary citizens, all have rights that they exercise in terms of our Constitution. And that is the beauty of our Constitution. Our Constitution gives ordinary citizens the right to go to whatever court or institution to get justice, to get their rights redefined, clarified, and that right must be available even to a president of a country. So we should not sit here and say there are certain rights for certain people and there are different rights for other people. So the rights that are enshrined in our Constitution are there for all. The matter of the president having sought to exercise his rights is a matter that he exercises as a citizen of this country. Now, when it comes to the issue of costs, I'm sure because this matter is going to be determined by the courts of law, the courts themselves will be able to adjudicate on that. So I think in the end, we should not sit here and second guess the court. Let us wait for a court of law to determine, and the president or whoever it should be, once the court has made a determination, has to abide by the judgment of the court. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Loliwe.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Deputy President, for the comprehensive response. It assisted even those who don't have a voice at NEDLAC. My question is, what role is played by government to strengthen working relations among stakeholders at NEDLAC? We understand that constituencies there are government, labor, business, as well as community. So some are not represented there. Thank you.
The Honorable, the Deputy President.
I would like to believe, Honorable Speaker, that a broad section of South African society is actually represented at NEDLAC. NEDLAC represents working people as represented by their various federations. And at NEDLAC, we sit with 3 federations, with NACTU, FEDUSA, and COSATU, and together they represent millions and millions of the working people in our country in the various sectors of our economy. Government is represented as well, represented through various ministries, particularly those that have to do with the economic sector, but even the social sector is also represented. Business is represented through its various business associations, and communities are represented by a plethora of community-based organizations that represent a number of formations in our economy, and now in our country rather. Now the makeup and the architecture of NEDLAC is an envy to many countries when they behold what we do in NEDLAC and how NEDLAC is constituted. So I'd like to believe that there's no sector that could say it's not represented. If people are in the rural areas, the community-based organization represent them. If people are traditional leaders, the community sector does represent them. And a wide range of other subsectors are also represented. And I'm sure if there are shortcomings, these are shortcomings in terms of the architecture that can be looked at, and we can make sure that they are represented. Government itself is committed to making sure that the broad section representation of our country in NEDLAC continues to expand and increase so that NEDLAC continues to represent the views of our people as it deals with all the important matters that it deals with. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Esterhazen.
Madam Speaker, Honorable Deputy President. Honorable Deputy President, don't you agree that the use of populist politics and the conflicts by the within the ruling party are not only deterring foreign investment, but also have a negative effect on credit ratings? And you just mentioned business in your previous answer. The NDP, which was embraced by business in South Africa, now finds itself floundering because of instability in government. What are you doing to assure business that government remains committed to the NDP and a stable South Africa?
The Honorable the Deputy President.
I think it could be a mistaken belief that the so-called populist politics in the ruling party are making business move away and not invest in our country. Truth be told, South Africa is and has often been the leading country that attracts investments greatly in Africa as a whole. And investors are flocking at our doors. And as they do, they bring billions and billions. The attraction that we are having to foreign investors is quite phenomenal, even in these very trying economic times and even in these trying times generally. We're finding that investors keep coming to our country to invest. And in fact, we've got like the A class of investors, the top class of investors who come to this country. Companies that are blue chip. Blue chip countries often say that they invest in this country because they've got great confidence in this country and its future. And they are willing and have been doing so, pouring billions of rands in this country. And our policies have not been the type of policies that have driven businesses away. The fact that we continue, Madam Speaker, to have companies such as German companies, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Volkswagen, coming to invest here, and a number of other companies that keep coming to these shores means that we are doing something good. And only those with eyes can see that something good is being done in South Africa. Now, is the NDP floundering? The NDP is not floundering. The NDP is continuously being strengthened by the various initiatives that we embark upon. The 9-point plan, for instance, is a great one. 9-point plan was put in place to bolster and support the NDP. And through the 9-point plan, we are making a great deal of progress. Just to name one sector.
Order.
Madam Speaker, can you make them listen for a minute?
Honorable members, order. Please proceed, DP.
Now, I've never seen this. People who ask a question and then howl. When you are answering the question, it means that they don't want to hear the answer. So why bother to ask the question? And they are so facetious, all of them, because they just make a noise, and it is almost like they ask the question just to continue, their activity as members of parliament. They are not really seeking answers. They just want to make noise in parliament. So stop making noise and listen to the answers.
Honorable Deputy President, I must say Honorable Esterhazen is not making noise at all. The Honorable Tlowama.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Deputy President, how do you keep your moral principles in check when you are a deputy to President Zuma, whose presidency is characterized by looting and plunder? Don't you think you must lead us and ask the president to resign?
The Honorable Deputy President.
Madam Speaker, I don't think that is a question that deserves an answer from me. The honorable member knows what the processes are. He's not a member of the African National Congress, and I think that is his problem. If he was a member of the African National Congress, he would know how things get done in the African National Congress. Thank you very much.
We now move to question number 18 from the Honorable N.V. Mente of the EFF to the Deputy President. Honorable Deputy President.
Madam Speaker, I've been advised by the Department of Telecommunications and Postal Services that the South African Post Office is addressing the Special Investigating Unit and Public Protector findings on irregular expenditure relating to the renting of buildings by the South African Post Office. The recommendations relating to the current and former employees are being implemented. Former employees who were found to have been involved in all these activities. Internal disciplinary processes have been instituted, and in fact, they've been instituted against 2 current senior employees. Criminal complaints have been laid against former senior employees with the South African Police Service and the NPA. In the case of Echo Point Park, the lease thereof, 2 former senior employees are being investigated by the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation, one of whom is the subject of an asset forfeiture unit process. Since these legal processes are still underway, no amount of money has been recovered as yet, and I think we should allow these processes to ensue and see how all these various agencies that are working on this problem are going to come up with in terms of solutions. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, as I explained at the beginning of the sitting, we are taking this question and supplementary questions from other honorable members who are in the House. I have Honorable Mackenzie of the DA. Follow-up question.
Ngiyabonga Somlongo. Deputy President, paradoxically, it was the middle management and lower management at the South African Post Office that, in spite of being threatened, intimidated, and violently attacked during the 2014 strike, stayed at their posts during that 4 months of that strike that cost the SAPA hundreds of millions of rands in lost revenue that is very unlikely to return. During this strike, the directors of the South African Post Office Board, meanwhile, sat on their hands and drew millions of rands in massive salaries while the post office and its future burned to the ground. As a unionist yourself turned businessman, perhaps you can identify with the 2 union members that sat on that board, supposedly representing labor interests, and were forced to resign along with the rest of the directors after the South African Post Office was put under administration. Now, Deputy President, as you know, given your proximity, a fish rots from the head down. Will you acknowledge that all these directors had a fiduciary responsibility to the South African Post Office? And will you personally hold them to account under the Companies Act for the billions lost as a result of their criminal inactions? Thank you.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Madam Speaker, as I explained, and maybe I should explain it again, there are a number of processes that are underway. This matter is being handled by a number of agencies. The SIU has investigated this matter. The public protector has investigated this matter, and there's a report to that effect. Various other processes are now underway, and we identified some of the people who are also involved in all these processes. Now, the extent to which either people were on the board or so were either liable or whatever would have been discussed, investigated by the public protector, and she would have arrived at a particular view. Now, that is a matter that has been so extensively investigated and discussed that we should leave to these processes that are already underway, because this has not been swept under the carpet. It is a matter that is being discussed and looked at continuously, and I think we have agencies that are best able to deal with this matter, and that is where we should leave it, with the full knowledge that from Public Protector, NPA, SIU, as well as asset forfeiture, and the SAPS are all involved in trying to get to the bottom of what happened in the post office as well as during this strike. So saying anything further or even attempting to do anything further would actually to mess things up. So we better leave it to those who are best able to deal with these sorts of matters. That is why they are appointed in their jobs. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Shengwa.
Ngiyathokoza, Mhlonishwa Somlomo. Honorable Deputy President, one of the things which is a problem in the South African Post Office, of course, is the issue of cash flow. In order for it to continue to be viable and operational in a satisfactory business manner. In May last year, the then acting CEO of SAPO, Mr. Matonsi, appeared before Parliament stating that SAPO would be working on a planning model that included obtaining at least 30% of all government business where applicable, and that this had been agreed to as a decision of Cabinet. Last week, we then had the current CEO, Mr. Barnes, saying that despite government's commitment to 30% of business being channeled through the post office, this has not yet transpired. So the question is, Honorable Deputy President, does government not see SAPO as a dependable service provider or an entity, viable entity any longer? And when are these commitments going to come to pass? Because SAPO is in desperate need of this cash flow, and if government regresses on its own commitments, then we are bound to conflate the problems which the South African Post Office finds itself in. So when is this going to be applied? Thank you.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have interacted with people in the post office about this very matter, and I have said that they should put their best foot forward. They should not necessarily expect the customer, who would be government in this regard, to come forward with proposals. They are the vendor, they are the business people, they should be acting like really smart marketeers and come forward to government as the potential customer and put proposals before them. And I've even given them a lot of examples, things that I learned when I was also in business, that you put your best foot forward. You go to your potential customer with a clear proposition and telling them why they should use you. And I've said, you've got low-hanging fruit. Just go and pluck the fruit. So waiting, and we all know government moves slowly because it is big and all that, and any enterprise that seeks to deal with government must just move forward, even if it goes forward on an unsolicited basis. Move forward, put a proposition on the table, and expect that it will be dealt with, rather than waiting and waiting because it may never happen. So I say once again, and I'll say it again when I meet the post office, that go to government. Government has made a commitment. Come with propositions. Come to my office also with propositions and say, your office, Deputy President, 30% of your postage and so forth, this is what you should do. We are about to send Christmas cards. We're about to send Christmas. They should come to my office and say, Deputy President, we want all those Christmas cards you are going to send, and this is how we are going to send them around the world on your behalf, and this will be the charge. And that is what I would do as a businessman, which I'm not anymore, but that's what I expect them to do. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Mafu.
Enkosi Somlomo, sibambe ngazibini sekela mongameli ngale nkcazelo usinike yona. Siyazi kaloku kananjalo into bana iiposti zethu kweli lizwe sazifumana ziqhwalela ziphansi kwengcindezi okokoko sathi safuthatha intambo zokulawula kweli lizwe. Sekela mongameli, ingaba imigomo lento ke kuthiwa yi-turnaround strategy seyibonakalisa ubungcono na okanye ikhona into ebonakalayo eyenzekayo apha kwiziposi okanye siyinika ixesha elingakanani phambi kokuba ibonise iziphumo? Okwesibini, ingaba umsebenzi weposi uthini ngoku kule meko sikuyo nakwexesha siphila kulo? Ingaba utshintshile wenza izinto ezijongene nale mpilo sihleli kuyo ngeli xesha? Enkosi.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Where, Honorable Member, iposi inayo imigomo, futhi banemigomo emihle gqithi. I-management le engene apha eposini, le management ekhoyo ngoku, nale board ekhoyo ngoku eposini, they have clear strategies on what they should do to turn the post office around. In fact, they see the post office as a national jewel, a jewel that is spread throughout the country, that even goes to the deep rural areas of our country. And they want this jewel to work for our people, to be there in service to our people, and they've been making a great deal of progress. Okwangoku banezikweleti ezininzi, kodwa baye baphumelela ukuya ebhank bayo-raise a loan. In the past, they were not even able to go and raise a loan above the 6 billion or so that they needed. They've been able to do that because the banking fraternity or the banks have confidence in their turnaround strategy. Their customers also have confidence in continuing to give them work. And that means that the post office has a bright future going forward. I particularly like the energy that has been unleashed in the post office since new management has come in, a new board has come in, and we can say that in no time, the post office will be turned around and it will be the true jewel of the South African public enterprises. And they're benchmarking themselves against a number of other post offices around the world. They've looked how the Japanese run their post office, how the Germans run their post office, and they say that's exactly where they want to be. So we are soon going to see a post office of the future, a post office that is going to be so well modernized, so well attuned to the modern way of doing business, and a post office which will soon turn profitable. It will not happen immediately because they are starting right at the bottom. But in no time, we're going to see their cash flows turning into profit in time, and we are going to see their EBITDA also beginning to rise. So that means that the management that is in place and the board are going to be working very fervently to increase our fortunes as a nation in the post office. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Kubisa.
Speaker, thank you very much. Honourable Deputy President, it does happen sometimes that people who have committed crimes or are still under investigation are migrated to other senior positions or critical positions within the department. In your response, you have alluded to the net being thrown wide and has caught some of the people who were also part of the criminal activities. And are there any people, whether in the middle or lower management, who have been migrated to other senior critical positions within the department? Because that also is a scourge that does not assist us as a nation.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Honorable Speaker, I'm not aware of anyone in middle management or top management who's been moved or escalated to higher positions elsewhere in government, having served in the post office and possibly having been liable for some of the wrongdoing. So I don't have line of sight of that, but I'd like to say that, I mean, people who do wrong, in my view, should not be moved out and be given cushy jobs elsewhere. If a person does wrong, they must be accountable, they must be dealt with, and dealing with them means that they've got to be moved out of the positions that they also occupy, if indeed they are liable for the type of misdemeanors that the people who are cited in the post office have committed. Thank you very much.
We now come to question number 19, asked by the Honorable Madela. The Honorable the Deputy President.
Honorable Speaker, this is about the electoral system of the current proportional representation, which was adopted during the multi-party talks, the talks that preceded the 1993 interim constitution, and subsequently became enshrined in the 1996 constitution of our country. And this was done with the express intention of ensuring that there is representativity and inclusivity in our democracy. As a country emerging from a divided past, it was important that South Africans of all political persuasions be represented in Parliament, both at the national parliament level, in the provincial legislatures, and in municipal councils. Proportional representation, I'd like to believe, has served our country well because it has ensured that there is inclusivity and participation. With no threshold to participation in institutions like the National Assembly, the current electoral system has ensured that several of the smaller parties are also able to participate in the legislative processes and in holding the executive to account. Some of those have even found their way, small as they might have been, into the executive. From time to time, presidents of our country have also invited small, tiny parties into the executive. And this they did because they wanted to ensure inclusivity and representativity. Proportional representation has helped to forge institutions that reflect the diversity of our country while affirming the principles of representative democracy. This has contributed, Madam Speaker, significantly to social cohesion and nation building. While there will always be debate about the respective merits and as well as disadvantages of different electoral systems, we should always be mindful of the past from which we have come and the society we are still trying to build. As we engage in such debates, we should also consider the important contribution that our current electoral system makes to national inclusivity, to nation building, difficult as it might seem to be, this system of inclusiveness has served our country well, has served it so well that various political parties, from the ANC point of view, we can say with great pride, we've really been pleased that even smaller parties that have been part of the liberation movement, like the PAC, like the AZAPO, and the APC, have been part of shaping the democracy of our country, small as they are. And this, we are proud that being part of the liberatory forces in our country, they were not excluded. And all this happened because of the proportional electoral system that we've got. So as we think and toss around a number of ideas, let us just remember the role that this system has played in bringing us where we are. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Mandela.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Deputy President, for a very eloquent answer. Not taking away of all the positive attributes you have indicated, what proportional representative system has brought this country. We wish to ask this question, is it not the right time now? Is now not the time for us to review the formula used during local government elections in allocating proportional representative seats?
Order, honorable members.
Honorable Deputy President, I'm saying that a proportional votes must be counted and utilized only for proportional seats. It's not amending, it's not changing, it's not taking away the proportional representativity of the electoral system. And that we move away from what we are doing currently, Honorable Deputy President, and that is to combine ward and PR vote systems in determining the proportional seats to different parties. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Our democracy, Madam Speaker, is a work in progress. As our democracy moves towards maturity, there will always be a number of propositions and proposals that will be made for us to look at the journey that we have traversed. And the electoral system is certainly a particular journey that we have traversed. And when proposals are made and when thoughts are brought to the fore, that we should look at the efficacy and the effectiveness of the system that we have put in place, we should not shy away, look away, or run away. We should be willing and be brave enough to engage with the issue and see whether it still serves us as well as it did in the past. When we inaugurated this system, it was for purposes of building a nation, ensuring that there is social cohesion, and we need to have a political analysis amongst ourselves and ask ourselves whether those objectives are still being served and whether the system that we've got, be it at national level, provincial level, and at local level, whether it still serves the overriding purpose that we meant it to serve. So the idea that the honorable member is putting forward is something that we need to engage in. We need to not be shy to engage in Honorable Mandela's proposition, look at it, and I can say most certainly, from the ANC point of view, we are willing, prepared, and able to look at it to debate the matter. And we also encourage others to do the same and debate it more nationally to see whether we can come up with answers that can continue to entrench our democracy. Thank you very much.
The
Honourable Speaker, on the point of order.
What's the point of order, Honourable
Honourable Krambok has called the members of the ANC on the side fascist. So that we are fascist on the side. So he's in violation of Rule 84.
Who is honourable? Who said fascist?
That one.
Madam Speaker,
Yeah.
Madam Speaker, may I draw your attention to precedent in this House that when one refers to a party rather than an individual, that is permitted. That side of the House has called this side of the House a bunch of racists on several occasions, and it's been sustained because it's not impugning on the dignity of an individual member. And I'd ask that if we're going to take rules like that we're consistent then. So when you guys call the DA a bunch of racists, we want to take the point of what you must withdraw. So you want to dish out, but you don't want to take. That's the problem.
Honourable Steenhuisen, in actual fact, as a chief whip from that side, you know you mustn't, when someone has put a point of order, just rise and start addressing the House. No, Honourable Steenhuisen. Honourable, who said people are fascists this side? So you said it. I will consider this matter and I will come back to the House. I'm thankful that you actually did own up. Honourable Filtane. Honourable Filtane. You are no longer in the mood to ask the follow-up question.
I am.
Okay.
I just had to go through this lady. Good afternoon, Honorable Deputy President. We've had your responses to the initial question, but my supplementary question is based on the practical reality that here in Parliament, the voices of the minorities are only partially heard, in that the reports of the portfolio committees are not allowed to accommodate the views of the minorities. This then is a suppression of their constitutional right to be heard. We are only allowed to verbally voice our feelings from the podium, but not to be reflected in the reports themselves. Now, that means that there is no inclusivity, which you mentioned in your initial response. This, Honorable Deputy President, borders on the unconstitutionality of the practice because it violates our rights. Now, my question to you is, what process would you like to start, not resist, start in order to correct this, especially given that nowadays under the current administration, you hardly find a member of another party in the executive. I am not talking about deputy ministers. I'm talking about the executive. That is the seriousness of the exclusion of the minority voices. So when serious decisions of the country are being taken, there is no voice from the minorities. That borders on unconstitutionality. Give us our constitutional rights, please.
The Honourable, the Deputy President.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to say to Honourable Filtane that I think it is very unfortunate that minority parties that participate in committees feel that their views are not heeded and they are not accommodated. I always say to young people who come to me and say, we want to start a business, but we don't have funding. And I say to them, have you prepared a good business plan? Have you drafted a good business plan that you can take to a bank and make a bank wet their mouth and appetite to fund you? Because you've got to be persuasive. You've got to come up with your best proposition, your best proposal. and take it to whoever that you are interacting with and get them to see your point of view, persuade them to your argument or your point of whatever you want to do. Now, I would say to minority parties here in Parliament, because I think what minority parties should be doing is to come to the majority party with really effective proposals, really winning proposals, and not just proposal for the sake of proposal. I know that the African National Congress is always willing to listen. It's always willing to listen to good proposals. If anybody brings a good proposal, they will listen and will even take up your proposition. I have said this a few times in this Parliament, and I would say if I were in a minority party type of situation, I would always scratch my head to come up with the most unbelievable, out-of-the-box propositions, put them to the ANC and persuade them to accept my proposals. That is what I would put to you as a challenge. And I think you should do that. If you want some help from me, I'm quite happy to come and assist you. Now, coming to this thing of not being included in the executive, there is no constitutional provision that says that minority parties should be included in the executive. It has always been done. It has always been done as a prerogative of the President of the Republic. President Mandela did it, President Mbeki did it, and President Zuma has also done it. Now, deputy ministers are also members of the executive, and President Zuma has invited people, and he still has one of them in his executive. So it's not constitutional. It is done by the majority party and the ANC in this case to help build the nation, to enhance cohesion, inclusivity, and I think that should be appreciated. I don't think you should now say you have a constitutional right. There is no such constitutional right.
The Honorable Mwango.
Honorable Deputy President, the very issue that the primary question in this matter raises was a question that was raised by the Honorable Prince Buthelezi when he was Minister of Home Affairs. Honorable Buthelezi mandated the Van Zyl-Slabbert Commission to look into the electoral system, who subsequently, in their findings, proposed that at least half of the 400 members of Parliament be directly elected by their constituencies, instead of being deployed under the list system. A dual system should be implemented. Its recommendations have not been acted on. Is it not time to revisit the Van Zyl-Slabbert Commission proposals in the interest of social cohesion and in the public being able to then hold their directly elected representatives to account? Thank you.
The Honorable, the Deputy President.
In great respect for Prince Buthelezi on this matter, I know that he is one of those who has held this view for quite a while, and indeed when the Van Zyl-Slabbert report came out, he came out in support of it, and one respects that. And we should also respect the fact that people hold different views, and there is a different view that is held by people in the majority party here in Parliament. And indeed, people should not feel shy to continue raising this matter. This matter is should be part of the political discourse in our country, and if there is a persuasive and a compelling need to do something like that, it is something that can be looked at and be embraced. But for now, we have the system that gave birth to our democracy. What is broken with this system? I see nothing broken with this system right now. It's yielding good results, And it's a system which, put to good effect, should continue yielding really good democratic results for our country. So if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Dudley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As you've said, Deputy President, South Africa's proportional representation system, selected for its inclusivity and its simplicity, also encourages participation. And given that both leading political parties in past and recent elections promoted the premise that a vote for a smaller party is wasted, a premise that is contrary to the essence of our proportional representation system, is your office taking any responsibility for better informing the electorate on this erroneous premise in order to strengthen and protect our multi-party democracy through its multi-party representation? Thanks.
The Honorable Deputy President.
We are on point, Madam Speaker, in continuing to spread the word that we have a very robust democratic system, a democratic system that is based on the best values that are enshrined in our Constitution. And we are also on point in saying that every person's vote is valued and it counts, and also in encouraging our people to vote for whichever party that they would like to support. We've never veered from that, and indeed, members of the African National Congress don't veer away from that, because we, having participated together with others to give rise to the democratic process in our country, are totally committed to strengthen democracy in our country. And strengthening it means that we've got to encourage our people to vote, and in doing so, vote for whoever they want to vote for. So we have never weakened on our determination in as far as spreading that message is concerned.
We now move to question 20, which is the last question asked by the Honorable Hlengwa. Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to get my notes right. Oh, I've got the wrong one. I got the wrong one. Madam Speaker, thank you very much for your patience. The recent protests at universities have challenged us all not only to grapple with the funding of higher education, but also provided lessons for efforts to promote social cohesion and nation building. The right to peaceful protest and to freedom of expression and association are fundamental constitutional principles that contribute to the promotion of social cohesion in our country. We will not be able to build a united nation unless all our people have the opportunity to freely express themselves, and unless we develop mechanisms to resolve differences. The struggle for access to higher education for the poor is fundamental to the transformation of our society. It is for this reason that government has prioritized its achievement through the establishment of a judicial commission of inquiry into the feasibility of free higher education, and through the massive expansion of state funding for poor students. Genuine social cohesion is premised on social justice, economic inclusion, and equity. Unless poor people have equal access to educational and other opportunities, then we will never be able to build a cohesive society. The Fees Must Fall movement has a significant contribution to make to the promotion of social cohesion. It has the potential to contribute to a fairer society in which the vast economic and social disparities in our country are progressively reduced and eradicated. There are other lessons that we need to draw from these protests. The inability of some of the role players to find common ground and resolve their differences demonstrates that we need, as a society, to improve our capacity to mediate conflict. Another important lesson is that we must increase our ability to listen to one another. Bobby Gotzel and his wife wrote a very, very stirring article this morning about calling on our nation to listen to our children, to listen to what they have to say, to listen to the stone throwers, to listen to those who want to go to university, but to sit down and listen is what we should do. We need also to ensure that legitimate protest does not denigrate into violence, destruction of property, and the disruption of academic learning. It is clear that most stakeholders in our universities are committed to the resolution of these issues, and that includes the students themselves. In many ways, they would like to see a resolution to this conflict. They would also like to work with government to address the funding of higher education in a sustainable manner. We must do everything we can to support the efforts of those who are genuinely and constructively demanding free higher education for the poor. As government, we are committed, and that commitment has been demonstrated by the various initiatives that we have embarked upon, setting up the commission, the Minister of Higher Education, spending hours and hours trying to discuss this matter with a plethora of people, be they students, the educators themselves, the principals of universities, and business people. Minister Jeff Radebe, in his ministerial role, leading the effort to try and find solutions to this. And indeed, we must also pay tribute to a number of other role players, people in business, church leaders or religious leaders, traditional leaders, parents, and many others. They have all been involved as stakeholders to ensure that this objective is achieved, and we applaud them for putting shoulder to the wheel and trying to find solutions. But most importantly, we must also say to those students who've been willing to engage and to talk and to get into various forums that have been set up, we applaud the efforts that they have been making, and all this is working towards finding a more lasting solution. And I have no doubt whatsoever that we will soon find a lasting solution to all the challenges that we face right now, which will enhance social cohesion and advance our nation-building efforts. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Shengwa.
Ngiyathokoza, Mhlonishwa Somlomo. Honorable Deputy President, at the heart of nation building and social cohesion are governments who actually deliver on promises that they have made. I put it to the House last week, and I had a little envelope for the Minister of Higher Education there, in which I displayed there in front, reminding the ANC in particular that you promised free education. Now, last year, Honorable Deputy President, I put it to you that had students not embarked on the Fees Must Fall protest, the issue of education seemed then not to have been on the radar of government. Your response was that you love students. What we have seen over the past year has been inaction. So the question I want to put to you, Honorable Deputy President, is the risks involved in making promises in the absence of plans and implementation programs will cause instability and is a threat to nation building and social cohesion. And this is attached to the fact that you made a promise going into the elections, and have only commissioned the feasibility of free education post the elections. So the question is, when you actually promised free education, what was on your minds and what was the initial plan? Because all that is happening now is a knee-jerk reaction to something which was totally off your radar and caught you by surprise. And finally, Honorable Deputy President, serious weaknesses and shortcomings have been exposed in the policing as far as these protests have been concerned. What action is government taking to ensure that public order police have the necessary capacity to deal and handle with violent protests, as opposed to reactions or a heavy hand which amounts and results in exacerbating the levels of violence and injury to students? Thank you.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The issue of free education was articulated in the Freedom Charter. And if you read the Freedom Charter carefully, you will find that the clause that refers to education says that education must be free on merit. Now, that needs to be read very carefully. And over time, no doubt, as expectations rise on everything, there's been a view that, yes, it has to be free education for all. Now, free education for all, whilst it's a desirable a notion, in South Africa, it will simply not be affordable. And that is why the government has gone out to address this issue. The President has done so, the Minister of Higher Education, Minister Jeff Radebe has done so, and a number of others have said, we agree totally to the notion of free education for the poor. And now we are also addressing the issue that has been raised prominently by students themselves. And in this regard, we have to applaud them, because there is the missing middle whose cause and problems and challenges that they have raised very prominently and very effectively, that there are those in the middle who do not qualify for NSFAS and who often don't get bursaries. And what do we do about them? And that is being addressed as well. And the response of government in laying out more money from last year to this year and raising the importance of education at a higher level is as a result of the various inputs that have been made by a various number of people, students as well, parents, and university administrators and academic leaders like principals. Now, we've got a number of role players who are not sleeping at the wheel, who are making a concerted effort to address this matter. This is a national matter. It's not a matter that belongs to one party or institution alone. And that is why the business community has also come to the fore. And Honorable Klengwa, I can tell you that a number of really exciting propositions are now coming on the table. The students themselves, I've actually been so impressed by accounting students at universities who've come with their calculators and crunched numbers and sat down with Treasury officials to show that, yes, it can be possible if we do this, if we do that, and so forth. But in the end, it all boils down to, can we afford to pay for every student who goes to university, even the children of the people who are seated here? And I would say the children of all of us seated here should not get free education at university level. We shouldn't. It is the children of the poor people in our country who should. I certainly would not be happy if my children were to be paid for by the state to go to university, and so you should not be. We can afford to pay for our children. There are millions of our people out there who cannot afford. Let us save the money that would ordinarily have been spent to fund even our children so that it can be channeled to the children of the poor people in our country, including the missing middle. Now, a number of propositions are coming forward. People are crunching numbers. People are coming forward with a lot of interesting and exciting out-of-the-box thinking type of propositions. And I say that we should allow that to ensue, and with all the initiatives that are now underway, we are cascading towards a solution. We are cascading towards finding a solution, and I applaud students who are in the middle of this maelstrom, who are still prepared to talk. Now, the one thing that we should also address is that we talk best as South Africans when we are not fighting. We talk best when we sit around the table. We talk less best when we are throwing stones and burning buildings. And it is therefore a call to young people, to students, let's stop burning libraries and our lecture halls. Sit around the table, crunch the numbers, and we will find solutions. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Mutau.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Honorable Deputy President, I'll just start where you ended. Indeed, to link up with what you're saying about throwing stones, I think there are very few people in this auditorium who will disagree with me that we are today far apart as a nation in terms of our nation-building effort, which is really taking a lot of strain. And by what you just said here, you actually signify that. I believe that we are so far apart that the rainbow in the South African rainbow nation has evaporated. The simple issue is that during the Zuma administration, the country has become more racially intolerant. Naked racism and xenophobia have become prevalent, and this afternoon we saw a bit of racism rear its head. Yesterday we couldn't agree on Madonsela. On Wednesday, Deputy President, here's a picture which will scare you if you haven't seen it. It was in the Sunday Times, of the people who were out here on the gate. And there's a picture, they say something here which is scary. And I'll read it to you. The caption says,
Honorable Member, please ask your supplementary question.
We have come to bury him, meaning the Minister of Higher Education. Now that cannot be. My question is, having said what you've said, Deputy President, and you as the patron of our moral regeneration effort and social cohesion and all of that, what are you doing? Are you sleeping at the wheel, or what are you doing to make sure that we bring that rainbow back into the nation?
The Honorable Deputy President.
Honorable Speaker, I can say with great clarity to Honorable Mutau that I'm not sleeping at the wheel, and he will find no one on this side sleeping on the wheel either. We are all involved. We are all involved in the process of nation building. This is a commitment that we made to our people, that when we come here to Parliament, one of the key things we are going to do is to make sure that we pass laws that are going to restore dignity to our people, that we pass laws that are going to advance their interests, reduce poverty and inequality and also unemployment, and also, more importantly, to have social cohesion and to build our nation. This is what we signed up for. So we are not sleeping at the wheel. Do you see anybody sleeping right now? No. Thank you.
The Honorable Gamede.
Speaker.
Honorable Waters,
I
what's
rise
your
on a
point?
point of order, Rule 85. While the Honourable Mutau was asking the Deputy President a question, one of the ANC members, and I can point and I can describe who it was, called him a sellout several times. It's the lady in the back row behind the marble pillar, looking away now, as if it wasn't looking behind her right now. No. She has in the past been asked to withdraw insulting comments on several occasions. And I'd ask you to get her to stand up and to withdraw the word sellout. She knows who she is. Thank you.
Is there an honorable member there at the back who was looking at the...
I don't think you're a lady, sir. The lady in front of you? In front. No.
Honorable members, is there someone there who would like to own up to having said sell out?
I could assist you, madam. It's the honorable member next to Honorable Luyenge.
Order, honorable members. Can I have
Honorable
the attention of the honorable members at the back? Can I have the attention of those honorable members? Is there someone there who would like to own up to having called the honorable member sellout?
Order, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Squatcher, can I just finish dealing with this situation? I'll attend to you. I will come back
Maybe
to you.
before.
Honorable, no, I'm still dealing with those issues. Is there anyone owning up? There's no one owning up, and therefore I can't take the issue further than that. Honorable Squatcher?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I wanted to know whether it's unparliamentary to say sell out.
I think, Honorable Squatcher, I'd rather we put that matter for discussion and you and I will discuss it outside. Honorable Kamede.
Madam Speaker.
Where's Honorable Kamede?
Madam Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Steenhuisen.
Madam Speaker, I really must implore you to take a harder line on this. This is not the first time this member does it. She does it every time a person of color from the opposition stands up. And I've witnessed it on several occasions. I've asked your whippery to deal with it in the past. She knows who she is. And I really think it's quite instructive that the Honourable Crumbach admitted what he said. But the ANC members who are brave enough to shout this out don't have the guts to stand up and admit it when they're called out on it. And I would really ask that you take a harder line on this. The member knows who she is, and she knows she does it every time because she looks over and starts laughing once she's shouted it out. She knows exactly who she is. And if that's how we're going to have, we must all cover our mouths and shout insults across the floor. But that's not what this parliament should be about. You've heard what the Deputy President said about finding each other.
Thank you, Honorable Steenhuisen.
Speaker, if I may help you, I've got the surname of the honourable member, if I may address you.
Yes.
Her name is Honourable Manana.
Where's Honorable Manana? Honorable Manana? Honorable Manana, talk to me. Did you shout, sell out? Honorable Manana shakes her hand, her head.
No, Speaker.
So, honorable members, I'd like to go past this issue. Take a seat, Honorable Manana.
Madam Speaker.
Honorable Steenhuisen, we can't take the issue further.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to make...
I've heard what you have said. Can I now proceed? And in fact, if you want to pursue it, we can talk about it.
Madam Speaker, I can't pursue it outside of the House. But what I'm asking you to do is would you please ask the table staff to examine the television footage from this afternoon, to examine at this time whether it is caught on footage. Because Honourable Manana is not being honest with the House.
Thank you, Honourable Steenhuisen. I will do so. Honourable Kamete.
Thanks very much, Speaker. Deputy President, some of us, and most of us, do really appreciate the passion that you have and the government about the issue of education. Deputy President, from your experience for the project on the revised funding framework for universities, which reviews the experiences of 6 years of partial and full implementation of the current funding framework and whether it has achieved the goals set at its inception. In your assessment, do you believe that the key stakeholders in the higher education sector understand the need for social cohesion and acceptance of different views and opinions to ensure the success of the white paper's objectives and goals? Thank you.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Madam Speaker, I think there is appreciation of various role players in various sectors to appreciate the task that we have at hand to enhance social cohesion through education. The issue of funding has been widely entertained and looked at, and principally by the Minister of Higher Education, who has, from time to time, engaged a number of experts, a number of people who he has put on various committees to look at things like the funding of universities, funding of historically disadvantaged universities, the issue of free education, and a whole lot of others. And he's been taking a lot of steps to address the issue of funding for higher education. And of course, he's always come against the tightness of our budgetary process, where, yes, we must admit, not as much money that he would have wanted has gone towards funding higher education. But at the same time, government has also been pumping quite a bit of money with increased demand. The access to our educational institution has widened and broadened. And with greater access of our young people, the resources that have been generated by our revenue systems have not been compatible with the level of increase that we have had. And so therefore, we always have had to play catch up. And indeed, the system requires adequate funding. And now that we are now grappling with the pointed issue of funding children from poor families and the missing middle, I believe that we will be able, with the participation of various components of our society, particularly business, to put together funding that's sufficient to assist all of us in making education free indeed for poor families in our country, and also to get quite a lot of funding to be pumped into assisting those in the missing middle. So I think a lot is being done to move the process forward, and it all adds up to nation building and enhancing social cohesion in our country. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Majeke.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Deputy President, it is clear that something must be done in focusing on educating, mentoring, and developing the youth of our country to become leaders. Can your office plan to have bursaries, maybe 1,000 or 5,000, depending, 5,000 students that you can give bursaries for leadership courses? Why I say this, Honorable Deputy President, if students are trained for being leaders, there are certain things that they are being trained to do and not to do. This probably would help towards educating the other students so that they don't destroy property whenever they demand something, either from government or for whoever. Thank you, Deputy President.
The Honorable Deputy President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. It was actually just today that we were talking about a concept like that, to put together a process through which we can have as many young people as possible participating in leadership enhancement courses and processes that we believe we can get funding for. So that is precisely the issue that we thought will go down very well for the young people in our country, specifically on the issue of leadership. But you may know that on the issue of broadening their skills and getting technical skills, we forever trying to find opportunities for young people. And as we travel, both the president and myself and a number of ministers, as we travel around the world, we always want to open opportunities for our young people. It is always a joy when you travel to various countries, be they Sweden, be they Japan, be they Singapore, and you get South African young people who have taken up opportunities to go and learn. Some of the courses are long, some of the courses are short, and they are taking these opportunities up by leaps and bounds. And we really feel encouraged when that happens. And to this effect, we're doing everything to spread them and to broaden them. And as we interface with a number of countries that have reached a certain level of development, we always ask them to open up spaces and opportunities for South African young people. But thank you very much for that suggestion. It is something that we are taking up. So we will feel more emboldened now that you have also risen to support it. Thank you very much.
That concludes questions to the Deputy President. I thank the Honorable Deputy President.
I'd like to say something, if I may. I got a letter, a love letter and a confessional, which I'd like to respond to from Honorable Ollis. He's written me a really nice letter, which deals with his own personal history in terms of how he participated in opposing apartheid. And I rather enjoyed reading this letter, and I'd like to once again offer him my apology for having referred to him as a white South African, which I have withdrawn. And this letter also goes to confirm, much as he hasn't written it here, his own withdrawal in the reference that he made in relation to having blood on my hands. And he says, he has done his little bit. He has done the little bit that he could. And I really applaud that, and that warmed my heart, that here is a fellow South African who I referred to wrongly, who says that in all this, he also did his little bit, and I accept what he has written to me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Deputy President. I will now hand over to the Deputy Speaker, who has been hovering in the background.
Deputies are in trouble today, I see. The next item on the order paper is a motion in the name of the Chief Whip of the Majority Party. Honorable Chief Whip.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I would like to move that this House, in terms of the National Assembly Rule 4.1, suspends Rule 36.2, which deals with the granting of leave of absence by the Assembly, pending discussion of its application by the relevant structures. I so move, Deputy Speaker.
I now put the motion. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the first order of the day.
Consideration of the Budgetary Review and Recommendation Report of the Portfolio Committee on Human Settlements.
Now recognize the Honorable, the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
I move that the report be adopted by this House, Deputy Speaker.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. The fourth order, the Secretary will read the second, fourth order together. Yeah, no, it's second to fourth.
Consideration of the Budgetary Review and Recommendation report of the Portfolio Committee on Defense and Military Veterans on the Department of Defense. Consideration of the budgetary review and recommendation report of the Portfolio Committee on Defense and Military Veterans on the Department of Military Veterans. And consideration of the budgetary review and recommendation report of the Portfolio Committee on Defense and Military Veterans on the Castle Control Board and Armscor.
I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Sorry, Deputy Speaker. Honorable Deputy Speaker,
Yes,
sorry
sir.
to take you back to the to order number 1 of the day, but my member would like to make a declaration, and I understand other members would also want to make a declaration.
With due respect, sir, we have passed.
But you passed so quickly, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
That's the pace in the afternoon, sir.
It's normal practice from the time we've started with reports, for every report, that declarations for 2 minutes were allowed to members of all parties. But if you say we passed, then we passed. I
Yeah,
accept
we
it.
regret that you couldn't do that, Honorable Member. The Chief Whip Majority Party.
Deputy Speaker, I move that all these reports be adopted by this House. Thanks.
The motion is that the reports be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections.
Chair?
Yes.
There's no objections, but we would like to make a declaration, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead. And the usual amount of time, as agreed. It's 2 minutes, you know that. Please activate the speaking plates there.
Thank you very much, Chair. The Department of Defence achieved an unqualified audit report, 99% budget spending and met most of the tick box targets. Dit beteken egter niks indien die departement nie die basiese vereiste van 'n nasionale verdedigingsmag kan nakom nie. Current budget priorities are irrational with adverse implications on sustainment of the defence capabilities, supporting and executing audit commitments, human resource rejuvenation. My apologies. The Department of Defence is now considering 2 funding packages. The first one, those that the current budget allocations can accommodate. The committee specifically resolved that the department must prioritize the budget allocations. This has got the implication that the VIP jet acquisition must be cancelled, whether for lease of the 96 million rand or the purchase of a new one. The needs of 28 and 35 squadrons must be prioritized. Spare parts funding for routine maintenance and snack repairs must be prioritized. The second package being those that need additional funding. Despite the 99% budget spent, we still find sea hours utilized under budgeted. Total flying hours under budget, while VIP hours over budget. Military health service are in shambles. 55% of the budget is spent on human resources compared to the Defence Review's proposal of 40%. The Auditor General criticized the Department of Defence and the Department of Military Veterans leadership and their lack of accountability and oversight. There's a critical skills shortage. On the Department of Military Veterans, which is a serial underperformer, again a qualified Auditor General report, poor service delivery and support to all military veterans, a dysfunctional department, still no equal treatment of old statutory forces, database is still incomplete, and the Auditor General also confirmed that the Minister has failed dismally. It's back to the drawing board for the department. What about the 8.9 million unemployed that must be put into jobs? We must grow the economy, and the department must seriously reprioritize both departments' expenditure. And the saying is, cut your cloth to size. It is very important that with this, we support the report, but it is appalling in terms of how it is
Remember your
managed
time
and
is
spent.
badly
Thank you very much.
expired. Honorable Ngango.
The IFP would like to support the report. However, we would like to raise certain issues that the South African Defence Force remains at an inadequate level or resource funding in terms of its strategic resourcing, organizational renewal, human resources, and defense capability. Put simply, the SANDF is currently substandard in the event of it being called upon in respect of national defense or peacekeeping operations on the continent. It is imperative that a phased-in implementation of the defense review begins in earnest. Rejuvenation of our defense forces must be prioritized, with an aging leadership and little being done to foster younger military progression through the ranks. Our defense force will suffer a gradual diminution of critical skills and institutional knowledge. National service should be seriously looked at by the department. This will not only provide our unemployed youth with jobs, but also teach critical life skills and lead to skills renewal and rejuvenation in our defense force. Discipline within the ranks of the defense force remains low, and this inculcates a corresponding low morale amongst our soldiers and brings with it a lack of discipline. In respect of our military veterans department, we would like to actually express our concern that for a number of years now, this department has continued to actually receive a qualified report, and that this department is actually dysfunctional, and that this department actually could not spend its budget. It only spent half of its budget. So we are saying that as IFP, attention should actually be given to this department. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dead on time. That's exemplary, Honorable Mwango. Absolutely. Follow suit, sir. I hope you follow the good example.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Analyzing the three reports under consideration today invokes within us a sense of despair. With the exception of the Castle Board, the observations and recommendations of the Portfolio Committee paint a very bleak picture of the state of management in the Department of Defense and Military Veterans. When we look at the rate at which key performance indicator goals are met, our sense of despair tends to alarm. In the military veterans budget, only 50% of the goals were achieved, and only 65% of defense budget targets were met. Chairperson, Deputy Speaker, such low achievement figures ought to give rise to alarm. If this is the standard of management of our national defense capacity, then we should have serious cause of concern. The NFP is particularly perturbed by the lack of efficient financial management within the department across the three budgets. The prevalence of irregular, unqualified, and wasteful expenditure running into millions of rand is absolutely scandalous, and we question why stern actions is not taken against those involved. However, the NFP will support the report and recommendations of the Portfolio Committee tabled today and urge the department to make every effort possible to implement these recommendations without delay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's more than exemplary. Honorable members, the motion.
Deputy Speaker, Yebo. Deputy Speaker, right here.
Okay, Bob Kamet.
Yes. Deputy Speaker, we also make a declaration as the ANC. The Department of Military Veterans derives its mandate from the Military Veterans Act, which requires it to provide national policy and standards for socio-economic support to military veterans and their dependents, including benefits and entitlements to help realize a dignified, unified, and empowered and self-sufficient military veterans community. The ANC, in supporting this report, commends the strides the department has made to improve its performance, particularly in relation to certain benefits such as bursaries, health benefits, the 450 military veterans employed at SASA, and 56 veterans receiving compensation for injury in military services. The 1,700 military veterans who access job opportunities, and the exhumation and reburial of remains of 15 military veterans. We have noted the slow pace of delivery of houses and lack of progress on subsidized transport were raised as a serious concern in the committee. But at the same time, note the intention to utilize alternative delivery models to deliver houses. We have recommended that the department should report back on the progress on provincial offices as they are crucial to reach out to military veterans in the country. The ANC supports the report.
Thank you. That's also exemplary. Honorable members, the motion is that the reports be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the last order.
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Women in the Presidency.
Now recognize the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. I realize the member is already up for a declaration. It's your turn, ma'am. Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It is sad indeed that time and time again that the DA must come to this podium and denounce the department's inability to produce a shred of evidence of positively impacting the lives of women. What rare justification can we give to our women for such endemic failures? Evidence to this is according to the Management Performance Assessment Tool, which showed that the score of the department has dropped from 73 in 2014 to 66 in 2015. There's also the issue of spending within the department, whereby 67% of its budget is allocated towards salaries. It has a staff complement of 111, of which 36 are senior managers, which makes it have a ratio of manager to staff of 1:2. This is very concerning. And yet, with that, the department has only achieved the targets of about 47%, and yet spending 95% of the budget. The committee rightfully brought into question the value for money and the ability and competency of existing staff to deliver on its objectives. There's also a concern with non-compliance with Treasury regulations and the Public Management Act. The specific matters related to supply chain in terms of procurement and contract management were unacceptable and should have been avoided. With that, we have several times received assurance that compliance matters will be addressed. But of particular concern was the movement of funds from the core programs, which is the administration. This has been a matter which has been consistently raised by the committee. And although with approval from Treasury, the administration could continue to receive the disappropriation amount of funding as compared to the core programs. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Van Melberg.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, it is the IFP's view that the Department of Women in the Presidency continues to be found wanting in many respects. In fact, I'm still wanting to see any shred of evidence that this department is actually tangibly making a difference in the lives of the most disadvantaged women in our society. And as I'm speaking, the minister is not even listening, but I will continue. Simply put, this department has performed poorly, with repeat findings from the Auditor General. Critical areas of concern have not been addressed since the last financial year, and in some instances, they've actually regressed. Of particular concern is the fact that the department overspent on the compensation of employees. It has again moved funding from its core programs to administration. Thus, the very bulk of the department's budget is being spent to pay salaries instead of actually executing its core business. The department spends almost 100% of its budget but could achieve only less than 50% of its targets. It is simply not good enough. Yet the Commission of Gender Equality achieved close to 90% of its targets. Credit must therefore go to this commission, which continues to do good work on a shoestring budget. By contrast, this department is still failing to successfully address women's empowerment matters. One palpable example is the fact that despite the existence of an entire department to fight for the rights of women and children, schoolgirls still go without access to sanitary pads, despite endless promises from this government. NGOs in the IFP have therefore stood in the gap to ensure the dignity of our schoolgirls. The IFP is honouring its promise, and we've started rolling out free sanitary pads in our municipalities. These are the type of projects this department must own and run with. 5 years ago, President Zuma promised free sanitary pads to schoolgirls, but the Department of Women in the Presidency have failed to hold to account the Department of Social Development, Health and Education to deliver on this promise. If this department starts with these basic interventions, one can live in hope that this department can become something more than an employment agency.
I'm afraid your time has expired.
And the Minister didn't listen.
NFP.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The NFP has serious reservations about the feasibility of this department in the presidency. And we are of the opinion that taxpayers' money could be spent more wisely and fruitfully if this department were to merge with the Department of Social Development. Among the myriad of management ills revealed in the Portfolio Committee report, one fact towers above all else. The department has admirably managed to spend 99.61% of its allocated budget, but it has only achieved 47% of its goals set out. The NFP would be remiss if we do not express outrage and call on the minister and senior management of the department to give a clear and unambiguous explanation for this sorry state of affairs. We also noted that despite the department getting a commendable unqualified audit opinion from the Auditor General, several of the observations point to the potential for slack financial management. It is imperative that the department move swiftly to deal with these concerns expressed by the Auditor General in the interest of transparent and accountable governance. In conclusion, Deputy Speaker, despite our reservations, we will support this report, and we urge the department to take immediate actions on these recommendations. Thank you.
Honorable Majeke.
Deputy Speaker, before the next speaker takes the podium, I'd just like to ask you, is it parliamentary for the minister, whose report we are dealing with, to continuously talk while while members are delivering their declarations? She spoke right through the DA's declaration, the IFP declaration, and the UDM declaration, not giving a moment's notice to any of the speakers. I think it's indicative of the way she treats her department and women's issues.
Yeah, Deputy Speaker, yeah.
Yes, sorry.
I was on my feet before
Yes,
that, Honourable
Honourable Member, yes, go ahead. Please
Deputy
take a
Speaker, might I also just put on record the IFP's disgust with the fact that we've just made declarations on a very important issue, and I think the Minister talking throughout our declarations is actually indicative of a government that is not actually committed to women's empowerment. She didn't listen to any of the declarations, and I think that is really, it shows us that, it shows us that this department and this government is not serious about women's empowerment.
Point of order.
Yes, Honorable Chauke.
I don't know.
Honorable Majeke, just hold on.
I don't know on what rule the Honorable Water stood on. And again, Deputy Speaker, you have allowed an attack on the minister without intervening. I think it is not correct that you allow members to attack the minister in the House. It's not allowed.
Honorable Member, take your seat. Honorable members, the observation of members of Parliament, however they feel, is their legitimate response. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. I listen with my ears, not with my eyes and my mouth. And if they want me to repeat what they've said, I can answer to that right now. I don't listen with my eyes. If they want my attention, they should have mentioned that they need my attention. But I was listening to all the things they've said. I'll respond to them at an appropriate time.
Okay, thanks. All right, Honorable Majeke, please proceed.
Thank you, Chairperson. Whilst the reported achievements are appreciated, it is, however, a great concern that the targets with regard to the core business of the department have not been met. The department needs to develop and implement a proper monitoring system if it is to ensure that the resources allocated to its function are used effectively. The personnel expenditure of the department has to be controlled if the over-expenditure is to be avoided, and that the department
Point of order,
remains
Chair.
within the confines of its
Yes,
annual...
sorry, Honorable.
Point of order.
Yes, what's the point of order, Honorable?
I don't think we need the kind of resistance that the Minister of Women Presidency did. She's continuously talking to her colleague 4 times whilst a member is deliberating and addressing her. Why doesn't she just leave the house if she's not interested in what's taking place here? She must just leave right now.
All right. Honorable,
Just hold on.
yeah. Honorable Majeke, please proceed.
Accountability should be enforced to hold anyone responsible for the wasteful expenditure under check and to face the consequences of his or her own actions. Monthly controls should be implemented to make sure expenditure does not exceed budget. Senior management should exercise adequate oversight for non-compliance matters using the laws and regulations provided in the public sector to determine who should be held responsible. Appropriate and practical participation and involvement of women and girl child in the planning and rolling out of the Women's Month programs is missing, and yet it is essential. Lastly, women emancipation and empowerment is a daily matter, and therefore we need more programs that run throughout the year and not only focus on 16 days of activism and August, etc. The United Democratic Movement supports the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Members.
Honorable Speaker.
The motion is that the report be...
Honorable Deputy Speaker, I'm here.
Go ahead, Honorable Member. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. My apologies.
Okay.
Honorable Bengu.
Yes, ngiyabonga Somlomo. Firstly, kuzomela ngikhumbuze amalungu alendlu ukuthi lo mnyango umsebenzi wawo ukusebenzisana neminye iminyango ukuthi ibhekelele ukuthi leminye iminyango mayinikezwa imali zisebenzisa kanjani ukubhekelela inkinga zabantu besifazana. Akuwona ke umsebenzi womnyango ukunikezela ama sanitary towels, but as ANC sibhizi nalo lelo hlelo lokuthi umnyango ukwazi ukuthi usebenzisane neminyango njenge department yezempilo nomnyango wezenhlala kahle ukuthi kunikezele ama sanitary towels kuleyo umphakathi noma labo bantwana abadinga lolo sizo, kakhulukazi ukwenzela ukuthi ingane zingakwazi ukuthi zilove ezikoleni ngenxa yokuthi zisuke zidinga ama sanitary towels. And okunye esinakho la ukuthi umnyango wethu have received an adequate audit opinion from the Auditor General with findings, and then the department will be able to report to the committee on a quarterly basis. Umnyango wethu phinde futhi usebenzisane neminyango ukuthi kunezinhlelo ezenziwayo njengamanje zokuthi umnyango uhambele yonke imiphakathi yaseNingizimu Afrika ihambisana nama department, CGE and other chapter 9 institutions, so that kube nama national dialogues la abantu besifazane bezokwazi ukuthi baveze inkinga zabo abanazo kulo mnyango. Then njengamanje umnyango kuningi ozokwenza ukuze abantu base South Africa bakwazi ukuthi basizakale enkingeni zabo. And also would like to congratulate the CGE for receiving a clean audit with no fundings, and they have been able to achieve its 90% of its targets. As the portfolio committee, we have been able to meet with the departments quarterly to ensure that it's aligned its strategic plan and annual performance plan with objectives and targets that are smart and cost accordingly. So as ANC, we support the department, and we also support the report. Thank you very much.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. That concludes the business of the day. The House is adjourned.